mother and cop at same time. Gujarat police constable takes care of one-year-old son during duty, earns praises. Sangita Parmer, a woman police constable in Gujarat's Ahmedabad, was on Sunday spotted performing her duty as a police constable whilst simultaneously taking care of her one-year-old son, thus fulfilling her role as a mother at the same time. News agency ANI reported the curious incident from the Visat area in Ahmedabad, where Parmer was seen taking care of her son while being on duty. Sangita's son is just 1 year old and needs his mother's full care and attention at this crucial age. When asked if she faces difficulty in simultaneously performing this dual duty, Sangita said, "It is difficult, but it is my responsibility to fulfill both duties of a mother and of a constable." She added that since her son is unwell, she has to bring him to work, even having to breastfeed her son during duty. "He is not well, therefore, I have to bring and breastfeed him," Sangita Parmer told the news agency. Soon after the news came to fore, Twitter was all in praises for the lady who had shown that she was a professional at multitasking when it comes to fulfilling her duty as police personnel and mother. A Twitter user wrote, "This is real woman empowerment. More power to her." Others, still, took an apparent jibe at the anti-CAA protesters at Delhi's Shaheen Bagh, the majority of who are women. A user wrote, "And here in Delhi women are sacrificing their kids in the name of protest." Ahmedabad is under strict police vigil at this time, since US President Donald Trump is visiting the city tomorrow, along with his wife and First Lady Melania Trump. Ahead of United States President Donald Trump's visit to Ahmedabad on Monday, security measures have been tightened in the city, Ahmedabad Commissioner of Police, Ashish Bhatia, informed. As many as 108 senior police officers will be part of the security cover for the high-profile visit. 33 deputy commissioners of police, 75 assistant commissioners of police, 300 police inspectors, 1,000 sub-inspectors, 12,000 jawans, and 2,000 women police personnel have been deployed across the city, Bhatia said. He also said that the police have also requested for the anti-drone system, and asked the public to refrain from using drones. Meanwhile, U.S. Secret Service agents are already in the city and are coordinating with officials of Indian intelligence agencies to ensure proper security. The innermost layer of security will be handled by the U.S. Secret Service, while India's National Security Guard, NSG, will handle the second layer of security. The U.S. President will reach Gujarat's Ahmedabad in an Air Force One flight at around 11:30 a.m. on February 24. Donald Trump and his family will be personally received by PM Modi, and they will continue to a roadshow at 12 p.m. to Motera Stadium. A stopover at Sabarmati Ashram will also take place during this roadshow, where they will spend 15 minutes. A grand public event, Namaste Trump, will be organized to welcome him in a newly built cricket stadium in Motera area in the city, which is likely to be attended by more than 1.10 lakh people. The Namaste Trump event is being organized by the Donald Trump Nagrik Abhinandan Samiti, which will decide everything from the details of the event to the list of invitees. The event, Namaste Trump, at Motera Stadium, will end by 3 p.m. U.S. President Donald Trump is scheduled to depart for Agra at 3:30 p.m., Bhatia said. Sanders on top, key takeaways from the Nevada caucuses. Senator Bernie Sanders cruised to victory in the Nevada caucuses, heartening his supporters and stoking alarm among moderates who fear he is too liberal and would lose to President Donald Trump. Takeaways from the Nevada caucuses. Sanders' presidential bid gets rocket fuel. Sanders' convincing win means there is no longer an asterisk next to his status as the frontrunner in the race. He proved his strength with a broad coalition that included Latino voters, union members, and African Americans. Now Sanders claims 3 victories in a row heading into South Carolina next Saturday, and more important, Super Tuesday on March 3, when about 1/3 of the delegates needed for the nomination are at stake. The biggest prizes that day, California and Texas, look a lot like Nevada demographically. Another advantage, his opponents remain splintered and, with the exception of billionaire former New York Mayor Mike Bloomberg, underfunded to compete across such a vast terrain. But now there will be extraordinary pressure to try to consolidate moderate support in an effort to stop Sanders' rise. And Senator Elizabeth Warren will have a decision to make on how much she tries to draw separation from Sanders, since they are both competing for the progressive vote. There is at least one strong note of caution about Sanders' success. In Iowa and New Hampshire, he didn't seem to grow the electorate substantially. Data is still out in Nevada. Buttigieg issues warning about Sanders. Former South Bend, Indiana, Mayor Pete Buttigieg ran well behind Sanders, but he tried to cast himself as the strongest alternative to Sanders. In language uncharacteristically blunt, Buttigieg issued a warning to Democrats about the perils of nominating Sanders, whom he characterized as inflexible and whose ideas are not in the American mainstream. Senator Sanders believes in an inflexible, ideological revolution that leaves out most Democrats, not to mention most Americans, Buttigieg told supporters. He held himself out as the only viable alternative. We can prioritize either ideological purity or inclusive victory, Buttigieg said. He added, Senator Sanders sees capitalism as the root of all evil. He'd go beyond reform and reorder the economy in ways most Democrats, let alone most Americans, don't support. Despite his forceful argument, there's a serious risk to Buttigieg in the upcoming calendar. He will have to win over black voters in South Carolina, then pivot to a multi-state primary with comparatively limited resources. Buttigieg put out a plea for $13 million from donors before Super Tuesday. The former mayor of a city of 100,000 has repeatedly defied the odds in the presidential nominating contests, but the odds are getting longer. Biden has his back against a firewall. Former Vice President Joe Biden was hoping Nevada would turn things around for him after a disastrous showing in Iowa and then New Hampshire. He argued that he'd do better in a more diverse state. But Biden again lost badly, even as he told supporters at a Union Hall, "We're alive and coming back and we're gonna win." His last and best hope may be to win in South Carolina next Saturday. He's counting on his support among the state's black voters, they could make up 2/3 of the voters, to serve as his firewall. If Biden doesn't win South Carolina, the rationale for his candidacy will much harder to maintain. In Las Vegas, he tried out a new rallying cry, "I ain't a socialist. I ain't a plutocrat. I'm a Democrat. And I'm proud of it." Party loyalty may be all Biden has left. Maybe culinary isn't all-powerful after all. The 60,000-member Culinary Workers Local 226 represents workers in the casinos on the Las Vegas Strip, and it's routinely described, correctly, as the most powerful force in the state's Democratic politics. But it's not omnipotent. Culinary didn't want Sanders to win. It has strongly opposed his Medicare for All plan, warning its members that it would eliminate their own generous health plan. Some observers thought the union might end up backing Biden. But after the former vice president's embarrassing performances in Iowa and New Hampshire, Culinary instead stayed neutral. The calls from leadership went unheeded by many. Sanders had strong showings in some caucuses in casinos, where crowds of Culinary members chanted the Vermont senator's name and powered him to wins in most casinos. Culinary is driven by its members, many of whom are Sanders supporters, and there was no consensus among the rest about what they should do. Leadership decided to refrain from a divisive fight, helping pave the way for Sanders' win. It's a reminder that even in places like Nevada with strong political institutions, those institutions ultimately derive their power from voters. No bounce for Klobuchar. Senator Amy Klobuchar produced one of the few surprises of the race when she surged to a third-place finish in New Hampshire, announced that she had raised more than $12 million, and vowed to prove her doubters wrong. Her momentum proved short-lived. She finished well behind the leading candidates, and in the process, prompted questions about her viability. But in a speech to supporters in her home state of Minnesota, she was defiant and said she would continue. She even tried to make a virtue of the fact that Trump mentioned her name at a rally. "By the way, for the first time ever, he mentioned me at a rally," she said. "You know I've arrived now. You know, they must be worried." Probably not. Time is running out for candidates who haven't finished higher than third in any contest. That also applies to Warren, also desperately needs a win. Her strong debate performance came after much of the state had already cast early votes. Not a great return on investment. Tom Steyer, the billionaire who made his fortune running a hedge fund, bet heavily in Nevada, more than $12 million on advertising, and lost big, finishing sixth. Steyer has made strong appeals to minority voters, but in Nevada, failed decisively. But Steyer's impact on the race could come next week in South Carolina, where he has spent even more money. Polls show that he has made significant inroads among African American voters. That would not be good news for Biden, who is counting on those votes to resuscitate his campaign. G20 finance heads eye impact of coronavirus outbreak on growth, see modest pickup. Finance chiefs of the world's top 20 economies vowed to monitor the impact of the coronavirus outbreak on global growth and act if needed, as they said loose monetary policy and easing trade tensions would prompt a pickup in 2020 and 2021. The Group of 20, G20, finance ministers and central bank heads faced a sober presentation by the International Monetary Fund, IMF, which predicted the epidemic would shave 0.1 percentage points off global growth. We will enhance global risk monitoring, including of the recent outbreak of COVID-19. We stand ready to take further action to address these risks, the statement from the financial leaders said, using the medical acronym for the disease caused by the new coronavirus. Global growth is expected to pick up modestly in 2020 and 2021, they predicted. The recovery is supported by the continuation of accommodative financial conditions and some signs of easing trade tensions. U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said central bankers would look at options to respond to the epidemic if needed, while Bank of Japan Governor Haruhiko Kuroda said he was ready to ease policy if necessary. China was represented at the G20 meeting by its ambassador to Saudi Arabia, as senior officials stayed away due to the growing crisis over the virus. Chinese state television quoted China's President Xi Jinping as saying on Sunday Beijing would step up policy adjustments to help cushion the blow on the economy from the outbreak. The outbreak of novel coronavirus pneumonia will inevitably have a relatively big impact on the economy and society, Xi said, though he added the effects would be short-term and controllable. Saudi Finance Minister Mohammed Al-Jadid told a news conference at the meeting, "We have discussed the outbreak of coronavirus in China and other countries, and all the G20 countries agreed collectively on being ready to intervene with necessary policies." The epidemic, which originated in China, has since spread to nearly 30 countries and territories. South Korea raised its infectious disease alert to its highest level on Sunday, but the European Union saw no need to panic over an outbreak in Italy. In our current baseline scenario, announced policies are implemented and China's economy would return to normal in the second quarter, IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva said on Saturday. As a result, the impact on the world economy would be relatively minor and short-lived. But we are also looking at more dire scenarios where the spread of the virus continues for longer and more globally, and the growth consequences are more protracted, she added. Digital tax. The ministers and central bankers also encouraged further work by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, on global rules to tax digital giants like Google, Amazon, and Facebook. Intergovernmental group the OECD is to prepare technical assumptions by July that would allow governments to tax digital companies where they do business, rather than where they are registered for tax purposes. The group's efforts were stalled late last year by last-minute changes demanded by Washington, including a proposed safe harbor regime which critics say would let multinationals choose whether to abide by the new set of rules or stick to existing regulations. "I told my counterparts that Japan is very concerned about the safe harbor proposal," Japan's finance minister Taro Aso told reporters, joining a chorus of criticism by France and other nations over the U.S. proposal. "It would extremely diminish the regulatory effect of what we're trying to do. That is a view expressed by various countries," he said. Mnuchin warned, however, that he opposed discriminatory taxes on digital services, the providers of which are mostly from the United States. He said Washington would respond with investigations and potential retaliatory tariffs if countries decided to go it alone, outside the OECD deal. A final agreement on the global rules is to be ready by the end of this year to avoid a proliferation of different digital tax regimes all over the world.